Welcome everyone. This is going to be, as we mentioned in the comments, this is a made-in-flight sort of test of a live stream here on YouTube. This is going to be the first time that I've done this sort of thing, so bear with us as we work through the kinks. For those of you not familiar, follow us in the Discord chat, where a bunch of us there are chatting live. And we've been using Twitch for the past several weeks. But honestly, Twitch doesn't seem to be a very stable platform for what we're trying to do. So we are going to be trying some other things. We're going to be trying this on YouTube, and you should be able to chat with us live on Discord or here in YouTube chat and ask any questions you might have, and we'll just see how this goes. For those unfamiliar, typically what we've been doing on these shows every Tuesday is just have an informal conversation with about 20 to 30 people who are most often members on Hobby Squawk from hobbysquawk.com, so we're RC modelers who like to talk about airplanes and RC types of things. Hey Scotty G, nice to see you join. And most often we just spend 1 or 2 or sometimes even 3 hours talking about RC. And what you're looking at here on my screen is a live capture of basically of one of the aircraft that we've developed over the years. This is the Freewing 80mm Mirage in this case. But we go through different models. We've looked at the Corsair, we've looked at the Mirage, the most recent Freewing MiG-29 Gripen, and the MiG-29 Fulcrum, and the 80mm Yas 39 Gripen, and people will typically have questions for them and want to see the insides of these aircraft. And so this is a nice forum that we can use to show people live the insides of products that we've developed in the past. So anyone joining, if you have questions, just live chat them or live speak them to our conference call here on Discord, or of course you're welcome to just post a question there in YouTube. Okay, so for today, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be talking about the Mirage. The Freewing 80mm Mirage is an aircraft that we released several years ago, and it's a popular bird with the Yas 39 Gripen that we're about to release, or that we just announced last month, and we'll be bringing to the U.S. and to Europe here in the coming month. That's going to be our next big 80mm Delta. But we're still going to be talking about the Mirage because there are some things that we've been asked on Hobby Squawk as far as 3D thrust vectoring. Those types of fun elements, can they be adapted into older aircraft? And so today we're going to talk a bit about that, and we'll also jump into a quick design on Fusion 360 showing people how they could implement a change of that nature. Before we go any further, I'm hearing a lot of feedback on Discord, so if any of you guys are driving or in your car, Justin, I think that's you. I can hear. Yeah, there we go. I can hear that. So, okay. Andrew, nice to see you join the Discord. And I think we've got Pony Ride here as well. Okay. So. Stand by, guys. We scroll through a couple of other photos just to get that clear for us. There we go. In fact, you know what? I think I'll leave that one up there just for kicks. So we're going to jump into the Mirage. Let me show you a bit about what this aircraft is about for those unfamiliar. The Mirage 2000C, it's an 80mm electric powered aircraft. And I'll jump into the insides of the aircraft. Hey, boozers. We're trying out this live stream for the first time ever today. So nice to see you guys in. Thanks for stopping by and saying hello. Hello. With the boats that just arrived last week, we need to get you guys back up, or we need to get James down there to y'all and do a boating event with Papa and everyone else. So a question came in from one of the subscribers on Discord. He had asked, or I'm sorry, on Twitch. He's one of the followers or subscribers, whatever it is, where they're donating money. So someone had asked if I could discuss how to incorporate two things onto the Mirage. First of all is 3D thrust vectoring, and the second was not an afterburner set, which is what I thought he was going to ask, but he wanted to see if there was a way to incorporate a belly tank that used some sort of mechanism to expel smoke out the back end of the exhaust tube. Sort of that classic F4, vapor trail or exhaust fume trail. So we're going to talk about 3D thrust vectoring probably later on as more people jump on, but to address that first question, we're going to dive into Fusion 360, and I'll show you how we could conceivably design something like this and what that would look like. Okay. Oh yeah, absolutely, Wes. We'd love to figure out and set something up. I'm sure you've seen on Steve's YouTube, he just put his his USS Los Angeles, or his LA class sub in the water yesterday that he 3D printed. So I know that a bunch of us are now getting wet, so to speak. So that should be pretty fun. So let's talk about how do we put a live exhaust system into an electric jet. This is going to be a bit of a free draw, so this is brainstorming via computer. I'm not saying this is going to be final, but let's do a couple of things first. Let's plan ahead. And nice thing about live streams like this is I'm showing you the inside of the aircraft that we developed. So barring you buying one of our airplanes and cutting it in half, you're not really going to have access to these angles and these shapes. But first of all, we want to make a plan. We know that the end result is we want smoke. Some sort of subtle was his word. Some sort of subtle smoke trail that's going to come out of the exhaust. So it's not coming out of the wingtips. It's not coming out of a belly tank. He wants it coming out of the exhaust. We really have two ways to do that. Hey, Air Guardian. We really have two ways to do that. We can generate some sort of actual heat and fumes, but we can rule that out almost immediately because this is an electric aircraft built around a primarily foam platform, so we're not going to want any heat source. Okay, so that limits us then to something, if it's not pyrotechnic by nature or if there's no heat involved, then it's going to actually have to be some sort of powder, okay? So in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, so we can put a powder capsule. We can probably put one here. That runs into two challenges. One, the powder capsule by volume is far too small to give us meaningful sort of smoke coming out of the back end throughout the course of a 3 to 5 minute flight on the aircraft. Second, there's no way that we can actually perturbate that smoke or perturbate that powder, break that capsule, and expel that outwards. Just relying on FLX alone isn't going to do it. So let's think of something else. And you're right, Jandra. There's Air Guardian, as you see. There's a different thrust line issue here. The Mirage's thrust line is not. Maybe this is the first time anyone has noticed this, but the datum line of the fuselage and the EDF and the burner can, they're not 0, 0. In fact, they're all very different. So so if we can rule out, and what I'm talking about, guys, is you always want to be measuring 10 times and cutting once. So a lot of this is just planning. Once we get into the design element, you'll see that it goes very quickly. So we know what we want. We know what it cannot be. So logically, we start thinking of in terms of if it's not heat generated, but there's going to be some sort of vessel, some sort of tank that's going to be carrying powder, then now the question becomes, where are we going to store that tank? Can we put it in the fuselage? The answer is no. As a tubular fuselage, the Mirage does not have any space inside of it for a reservoir of powder. So that's okay because the Mirage 2000C, some of its configurations use a belly tank. So let's assume we're going to have a reservoir that's going to be a belly tank. It's going to be down in here, and that'll be great. The question then becomes, okay, so if that is where the reservoir is, we'll need then to devise a means of transporting that powder, because he wants it to come out of the tube and not say, can't just run a line out to the back here. It needs to enter the fuselage at some point. And when it enters that fuselage, how do we then expel it? We can expel powder in two different ways. The first would be pneumatically, not hydraulically, right? We could use some sort of pneumatic or air pressure with a solenoid, say, that would expel that air. Challenge there becomes weight in incorporating a solenoid, and two, obviously, we want a steady sort of constant stream almost of this powder. We don't want a puff of it like on an A10's cannon. So what I'm thinking of is I'd like to do something that relies on what tools do we have in the duct that we can use that are already there. Well, we have airflow. We have a lot of airflow coming out the back of this EDF inside the plenum here. We have quite a bit of airflow. So I'm going to think of a way then, before we jump into our design phase, we are going to devise a system that utilizes a reservoir of powder on the centerline belly tank to draw powder in and expel it out through the exhaust tube using only the airflow as the means of sort of sucking out that powder and pushing out in the back. Okay, so with that, let's dive into the design phase. Let me switch screens here. Let's jump into, there we go. Okay, so what we're looking at here is Fusion 360. For those of you not familiar, most of our primary design is done on SolidWorks, and we use a litany of other supporting software and plugins as far as aerodynamics, etc. For a lot of this public-facing live stream stuff, I'm using Fusion 360 as a demonstrator. It's not my primary software, but the nice thing about it is it's free to use if you're a hobbyist out there. So for those of you who are just trying on this world of designing something for 3D printing, or if you want to experiment with some of the things that I've shown over the past several weeks on this 3D design series, Fusion 360 is a great platform. There are other platforms out there as well. In fact, I believe the AMA offers a discounted or a student version of SolidWorks, in which case, if you think you're going to grow into this and really fall in love with it, I prefer SolidWorks. But for anyone curious as to what platform we're using, it is called Fusion 360. You can Google it. And I like to show it off because you can probably do 80% of what we do professionally with SolidWorks as on software like Fusion 360. It may take a lot longer in certain instances, but for most hobbyists out there, you guys should be able to do any of the stuff that I'm doing. There's nothing special here. Okay, so now that screen has refreshed and I see that you can see my Fusion 360 screen, let's just begin to block out some basic shapes. And the basic shape I'm going to start with is my reservoir. Just going to press C and extrude a reservoir. I can draw out the actual scale belly tank that the Mirage would use, later on. For now, we're just trying to envision a reservoir. And in fact, for that matter, let's just hollow it out. Just helps with visualization. If you're like me and you learn on an actual drafting table with something called paper and a ruler and pencils, the advantage of this type of design is it flows. It's very, very fluid. Yeah, Wes, I noticed that, I just went live just a few minutes ago just to test this out, so I haven't yet tweaked the settings as far as are my subscribers notified of a stream. So that's probably why you did not receive anything in your watch list. I think that's a setting I need to press, and I wanted to test this out first before I bug people. Okay, so as I was saying, the advantage of a system like this is it just helps us to better envision what we're doing and make changes on the fly, which is something that we couldn't do back in the pencil and eraser days. We're also able to get different viewpoints and different angles. Okay. Now this is the reservoir. Now in our minds, everyone, this is going to be something that is going to be inside a belly tank of that Mirage. Okay, look like a little bit of connective issues here. That's okay. And let's move on. Now at the same time, we're going to need some sort of apparatus. We're going to need some sort of apparatus that is seated inside the duct, right? And so let's draw that out quickly. And apologize for any lags, guys. I'm watching 4 different screens now between Discord and YouTube and my live stream OBS and the actual YouTube. I'm noticing that there's a bit of a lag in all of these things. But let's just build out a quick structure against which we can then think. All right. Yeah, I think I will try and stay on YouTube. Although, if people are talking in Discord, I think most guys are listening now. They're not talking, but but that's the real test. Can I speak to people on Discord live while narrating something I'm doing on YouTube while reading comments in YouTube? That's the I guess that's the trick. Okay, so I'm gonna go back to this design. So right now, guys, for super persnickety designers, obviously I'm not gonna take the time to build these out into separate sketches and bodies. You know, this is just a free drawing experience. This won't be final. But so this element is going to be outside of the aircraft, right, out on the belly tank. This component in here, this is actually going to be inside. And where are we going to be placing this? Well, I imagine we're going to be placing this right about here. So let's go back into the Mirage. And I'm going to want to run that centerline tank. I'll run a tube, and I'll position it right about here. And the reason why I'm going to position it there is 2 reasons. First of all, we notice that if this yellow piece here, this is the hatch. And I can, in fact, we can hide that hatch. And that shows us that the duct is there. So locating our device on the, you want to use the natural sort of holes and areas that we've already molded into the model. So let's remove this hatch and assume that the device is going to be placed right about here. That allows us to service that device, and it also limits the amount of foam we need to cut. In fact, if it's a bad experiment, it doesn't really work, we only need to buy a new hatch, and we're back in action, or just cover up the holes. Okay? Yeah, thanks, Wes. I'm grateful for the vote of confidence. The second reason why I want to locate it there versus something, say, all the way back out here, it isn't just for serviceability, but it's also because I want a nice sort of dissolution of that powder. I want it to. I don't want it to be coming out in streams at the tip of the outlet. I want it to sort of be billowing, as it were, inside the plenum. That gives it time, a few inches at least, to disseminate out of this device and spread and give us a more even sort of distribution of powder out of the outlet. Now this device. What am I talking about by a device? Well, this is again this apparatus that is going to require. Here's the trick. We want it to be able to be designed such that it creates a negative pressure where it sort of sucks. It sucks on the powder that's in the tank, and then is able to inject it, as it were, into that tube. So that device that I'm explaining is really fairly simple. Let's jump back into my 3D screen here. That device is going to rely on the principle of cavitation, or just sort of an imbalance in air pressure. So anyone who's been in a car, yeah, Dave. Yeah, we're sorry. I know we're streaming on Twitch right now, but I'm responding to the comments that are in YouTube. I need to have the Twitch stream comments and the YouTube comments and the Discord comments up at the same time. That's why these kids have 3 or 4 displays. So anyway, this device is going to rely on air pressure, on a difference in air pressure. Anyone who's been in a vehicle and you roll down, let's say you're driving the car and you've rolled down your driver's side window just a little bit, but the other windows remain up, you don't get a lot of airflow. However, if you drop your driver's side window just a little bit, but drop the rear passenger side window slightly more, you get suction. You get a difference in pressure. You get that imbalance, and that's what then will create more airflow. So that's what we're going to try and design here. It's going to end up looking a bit like this. And that device it needs to be thin. It needs to be something that we can insert. Yeah, that's what we're trying to do, Dave. You may have missed the beginning, but someone had messaged me, one of the subscribers on Twitch, and he had said, "Hey, since I'm a subscriber, can you design something for me?" And that's sort of what this is. There's sort of live requests and whatnot that I've acquiesced to. Okay, sorry about that. And that's what this will end up being. This would be something where conceivably, we'll check the volume. We'll need to check volume of the belly tank and the rate of sort of expense, and obviously at what point does the pressure in the belly can now be different, and now it's not going to suck as much, and all that sort of stuff we'll deal with later. We just want to get to a device that creates that action. And in fact, to demonstrate this, maybe I'll do this in a different way. Rather than just designing it to be complete, I do want to design it so that we can actually see the logic behind what I'm doing. So to that end, let's make this hollow. Yeah, let's make that hollow. So what we want is a difference in pressure, right? Fairly simple. How do we create a difference in pressure? Well, we want a small inlet on one end and a larger inlet on the back end. If that smaller inlet is introduced into the airflow, which again is positioned directly behind the EDF, we should be able to sort of agitate that powder enough, it doesn't really agitate the powder, but create that sucking motion to draw the powder out from within the tube. So first thing we want to do is design, well, what is the part that is in the airflow? And it's going to be this part here on the left. So I'm actually going to chamfer this out a bit. Something sort of like that. Now remind everyone again, this is free drawing. All of this stuff we'll need to test with the math afterwards. Just trying to generate a basic shape. Something like that should work. Okay. And what else do we want? We want a hole, so we're going to go ahead and poke in a channel. extrude this forward. And we're going to leave that lip mostly sharp. One of the passes we'll do on a final step, which falls under the category of math, is you want to make sure that this will print, that this will 3D print. So the edges and whatnot. We're going to make sure that we're within tolerance and that there's a logical place for it to sit on the bed and all those types of things. But now we have the beginning, and if we can imagine, guys, this hole here that you're looking at, this is what is just ever so slightly protruding into the duct of the Mirage. Actually, I'm going to close that up just a little bit. The reason why I want to close that is just visually, we want this piece on the back to be larger. Right? That makes sense. Small up front, big up back. Okay. In an odd way, we're almost designing a whistle. In a very odd way. Whistles have a neat sort of layout in that you're blowing air into them, and it's creating. A better example is like a flute. You know, we're creating airflow across an area that's creating. Oh, hello. Oh, never mind. That's someone else unattached. Anyway, so what was I saying? We're ultimately designing something where we can bring air in and get it to move while it's in this sort of chamber. And where do we want it to go? Ultimately, we want it to go back out the opposite way in which it came. So that's why we leave this sort of area a bit larger. And then the exit is obviously wider still. Now, I know two things. For those for whom this is a bit difficult to visualize, I'm going to move this structure upwards. Because again, this structure down here, that's in the belly. So this is outside. In fact, let me just reposition all of this. Yeah, so this area here, this is outside, and then this device is inside, and it's almost flush to the wall, except that this area here is sitting into the duct. Okay. We'll do a couple of other changes. What else do we know? We know that we need a area where that tube is going to enter. In fact, I don't imagine that tube's going to enter at that angle. It's probably going to be nearer to 45 degrees. So to do that, we're just going to construct a quick plane. Go to construct, create a plane at an angle. And I'm going to rotate a plane. This is about 145 degrees. Let me square up here. Let's go 150. The reason why I draw that plane at 150 is now I'm able to create my tube. And this is the tube that is now going to enter in. All right, that's looking a little better. And the reason why, guys, obviously, I'm designing this more as an instructive, so this wall is going to be sealed up. I'm just showing you what it looks like on the inside. Okay, I think that was apparent, but if it wasn't. Okay. Do something like that. Now, the other thing I know about air, you can imagine blowing across the top of an empty bottle. You know, there's a critical angle where that air sort of enters in and then becomes, and then you hear it. For any of you who have ever blown into a bottle. This is another area where we'll need to check the math, but I'm guessing that is right about 150 degrees, which is why the relative angle of this tube, our feeder tube, to the airflow, which is coming in through this inlet here, is 150 degrees. And why do we need that critical angle? Well, because we know that if the angle is too shallow, then the airflow will simply blow directly over this area without really interacting with the space inside of it. If it's too steep, then same thing. It swirls around but doesn't actually interact. It doesn't enter, but you understand it interacts with that tube. Yeah, sorry, Jandra. I'm noticing some of that as well. Which again, this is just a test sort of episode. We'll figure out how to make things smoother and if there are any other optimizations we can do to make YouTube better than Twitch. Given that we live stream on motionrc.com every Friday and everyone's live streaming these days, I'm sure there's a way to do it. I hope there's a way to do it. Yeah, Dave. Okay. Well, let me know if it's unfollowable. If it is unfollowable, because that's the thing. I'm sort of, we're live drawing, so this happens very quickly. If there is too much of a lag between what I'm saying and what is showing on YouTube, then that's a problem. If it's that you're listening to me on Discord and the Discord audio is disconnected from the YouTube video, that's fine. You should be able to just listen to me. The reason why I'm trying this on YouTube is you should be able to just watch the YouTube. So the YouTube audio and the YouTube video should be in sync with each other. And assuming that it is, that's going to be the way to watch these live streams moving forward. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Minutes? Really? Oh, that's quite a delay. Yeah. The other thing may be, there's a lot of data that my live stream is now streamed. Of course people can stream video, but this shouldn't be that intensive, but maybe it is. I do have 4 softwares running that it's streaming, so maybe that's the case. But guys, when you're watching just YouTube, is the YouTube audio in sync with the YouTube video? Okay. Got it. Can one of you guys jump off of Discord and just unmute YouTube and listen to me there? Because if the audio and the video are connected on YouTube, then we just need to stop listening on Discord or something. Let me know, Dave. Okay. Yeah, test it out. Let me know. Okay, so for those of you not following along on Discord, this is going to sound weird on YouTube. We've got a couple of guys, Air Guardian and RC Air Marshal, who are just doing some testing while we're working through the kinks on this live stream. We know that there is a delay between the Discord audio, which seems to be almost real time, and the YouTube stream, which seems to be, Dave said it's minutes behind. If that is true, then anyone listening on Discord and then watching the YouTube, they're not going to match. So you may guys need to choose one. If you're either just gonna watch the YouTube and the watch and listen to the YouTube audio, which are synced together, or you're not gonna watch the video on YouTube. You're just gonna listen to me talk and maybe feed me questions and whatnot on Discord. So that's what we're troubleshooting here. Yeah, we reinvented time travel. That's funny. Why? What happens? Is it as we thought? Okay. You can't. Yeah. Yeah. I would say. Got it. Okay. Yeah. Thanks for checking on that. I would say it would likely be better for you to. It'd be likely be better for everyone if you want to watch anything. You have to watch it on YouTube. Watch on YouTube and listen to YouTube. And then what can happen is you can still be live in my ear on Discord asking questions and things like that, and I'll get to them. It's just, you know, you'll hear it on the YouTube later, a minute or two or however long the delay is. I think that's one way to do it. Okay. Yeah, it's gonna be weird, or we'll try something else. I mean, we're smart. Yeah. Well, no, if you guys are talking on YouTube, I mean, you can still if you guys are talking on YouTube, you can still I mean, if you're talking on Discord, you can still talk to me in real time like now, right? So like let's say you had a question. I mean, ask me a question now. You would say, "Hey, can you do this?" And I'll say, "Yeah, I'll do it." And then because I said yes, I'll do it. Everyone who's and I do that in sync with the video. Everyone else who's watching the YouTube video is going to hear me say, "Yeah, I'll do it." You know, Jandro just asked me if I could do this, and I'm going to do it. And so watch me do it. Right? Yeah, cuz no one else, I mean everyone, the audience on YouTube and Twitch, they're not listening to the Discord. So, you know, from that point of view. Okay, Scotty. Yeah, thanks for confirming. Yeah, again, guys, sorry. This is the first sort of impromptu live stream, so we're troubleshooting a couple of different things today. So bear with us while we also live design something. So let me get back to this design. What am I doing while we're talking about a bunch of different things? I'm rethinking the entry angle for this shape. That's sort of what all this ended up happening to be. So so let's try, I'm going to do something more like this. Yeah, we're going to try a shape closer to this. Now, before I delete that part to the side, let me just tell you what I did. So we have air coming in here on this surface, and then that is going to be interacting with this tube of powder that's here, right? Yeah, now copy that, Dave. Yeah, I'm going to assume, guys, that everyone's just listening and watching on YouTube. And if you guys want to ask me something live, ask me it in Discord, and I'll talk about it. But you're going to hear yourself a couple minutes later, or you're going to hear me on the YouTube react to you, later. Okay, so let's so what was I saying? So entry angles are important. So that's what I'm tinkering with here. I want a better angle of attack for the airflow that's coming in to this device, and trying to situate it better leaving the device. That's what all this is. And let me tidy it up here, and then we'll talk about it. Okay, let's do something like this. I think it'll make a little bit more sense. So this sort of shape that we're working with gives us, I like the exit hole out here. I think that's going to be large enough. I like that it's a sharp edge. We're going to lose efficiency, obviously, because we're interrupting the boundary layer. There's going to be some turbulence as that air spins, but that's okay because this height is only about 4 millimeters or so. It's not that bad. But I like that right angle. We want it to be turbulent. We want it to create that suction. And the position of this face, which is our feeder tube for our powder, is its positioning is going to be important. We want it to be ever so slightly lower than the angle of the airflow coming in. So that's going to be on this face here. So let's go and just draw a quick little shape down here. And let's bring this up and bring it across. And now we've cut our hole. Two things we know. We know that, of course, this hole is at the same height. We want it to be higher, so we can make that adjustment by just fiddling with our shapes there. Bring that up right about to that much. This one's going to need to come up, say, just a little bit, right around there. And you can sort of see how I mentioned earlier how this looks a bit like a whistle. Because what ends up happening is now we have a little bit of air coming in there. The positioning of this feeder hole seems to me to be about right. The exit hole is sufficiently large to create sort of back pressure, to draw. Once agitated, that airflow is going to come over the top, and just like blowing over a bottle of Coke or Corona or whatever, not Corona, that's going to swirl in here. It's going to draw out that powder, and once agitated, once in this device, this space, because there's a back pressure here created by that large hole, where's that powder going to go? It's going to go out. And once it gets out here, where is it? It's in the duct. And obviously, it's going to be introduced to very, very fast efflux airflow of about 160 miles an hour or so. Actually, a little more. So the last thing we need to do as far as this physical device is work out the volume. This is, again, where the math needs to come in, where I would need to go and figure out, okay, what shape inside this space do we want to introduce such that that pressure generated is enough to agitate this, and it actually swings out and the powder comes out. If we were to put a ball in here, this would probably rattle around, and we would call it a whistle. But we don't want airflow to disturb a little ball bouncing around making a rattle sound. We want that airflow to disturb the powder that's in our feeder tube to then draw it outwards. So that's the principle that we're going after. This seems to have achieved our goal of something that can do those things while being super easy to print, easy enough to locate in the model, and not requiring any wiring. This is purely a mechanical apparatus. Thinking through it now, Another thing, if we wanted to get fancy, would be if we found that feeding was an issue, if we found that either this space needed to be too large, where now it no longer fits in our target area within the fuselage, or let's say even if it was small, we were having too many issues getting this to feed well, and we wanted to agitate it, like mechanically move this feeder tube up and down. Would that be easy enough to design? Let's do that very quickly here. Let me do. Let's go back to 150, and I'll draw something just alongside it, just for sake of argument. We could have a tube that's like this, and this is a hard tube that's again coming off of the tank in the belly. And once it got inside, I'm just designing this side by side. And once it got inside this box, we could then, let's say that this was 3D printed, or that this was something hard, something rigid. We could then introduce another tube, looking a bit like this, and let's say that was flexible silicone. Flexible silicone would just be just a little bit. And then we would return, we'd slide that silicone tube back over the outer tube. And then do our same sort of shaping and location as we did for this. So what would this give us? Well, because we've introduced a flexible tube that's right here, this blue area here, if that tube was sized and tensioned properly, and it was long enough or short enough, we could deal with its torsional rigidity that way. Then we could essentially have this area, this harder tube, gyrate. It would move around based on the airflow, right? These are things we would calculate and test for. We'd want this rigid enough where this tube wasn't banging up and down like a whistle. That's not what we want. But we would want it to be slightly supple enough where this feeder tube would vacillate up and down maybe a couple of degrees or a few millimeters, however it worked out. And what that would replicate in real life, it would be like basically as if you're sifting a spoon, or if you had powder in a straw and you're sort of shaking it just a little bit, right? That motion, we don't need a servo or some sort of spring or anything to necessarily make that move. We could just use the material properties of this tube to get the end of it to be flexible and movable. This is what I'm trying to say. Just for sake of visuals, I'll slice this off. Okay, so I think that's about it. So let's tidy that up a little bit. Yeah, I think that's about it. We now have, a big tube. That's our reservoir. Inside of it is powder. We'll devise a simple way to fill it up. And if we really wanted to get extra fancy, we could always maybe show you guys. Let me show you the inside of this tube. We're not just designing, folks. We're designing things in cutaway. Let me show you the inside of this. Show you what this looks like. So inside this tube, this could be just a simple twist off or a pressure fit, where this fitting comes off, and we're just refilling this tube with dyed potato flour. Potato flour actually works really well, It's typically available in bright colors for Diwali, which is a Hindi festival. Orange and yellows and reds and those types of colors, which actually make great fire retardant if you're simulating like a fire drop on a fire bomber or tiger cat. I don't know if they have black. I don't think they do, but it'll be up to you guys to find black colored powder, maybe soot, maybe ash, whatever it is. But you're going to be recharging this and refilling this, and we could rely purely on that pressure for that to be drawn out. We could also sort of help it along. Let's design something that's going to be inside this, which will be very simple, as you'll see. We're just going to devise... Let's see. We're going to want a little itty bitty plate. So I'm going to introduce a coil to this shape. You guys get the idea. You'll figure out the number of revolutions you need. I'll just put maybe say 6, just for sake of expression here. And then what we will then do is we'll create another plane at an angle here. I think that looks fine. Yeah. And you see what we're doing, guys. We're essentially just making a plunger. You're devising some sort of easy mechanism that can help that powder move along. In fact, I need to make this a bit big, a little bit larger. Something like that. The beauty of 3D printing is these are shapes, or these are simple shapes, guys. This isn't, the internal substructure on a MiG-29 wing. These are just cylinders and boxes. So if you found that you needed sort of this to be helped along, I can imagine some sort of spring setup where, and even you would have a little latch that came out of it like this. I'd refer everyone's attention to something like an airsoft BB reloading canister. Those have little latches. You'll get the idea. Those latches go on either end. They sort of slide along a very thin groove in here. And that allows you to grab this blue area, slide it all the way back to load the spring, and then you fill in that space, the space here, with your powder. When you let go, the only thing holding that powder there, taut against the fitting here, is that spring tension. So that spring tension, it adds a mechanical helper to the pressure helper that we're relying on up here to draw that powder up and out. And you may, in fact, this is where testing will be imperative, we may find that the distance that powder needs to travel, which is substantial on the Mirage, it's going to need to move at least 8 or so inches across a tube of a certain gauge. We may find that we're going to need either a bigger reservoir or a thicker gauge of tubing or a tighter spring, or we're going to find that the entire device doesn't work at all, and that's not to be answered today. This should get us to the prototyping phase where we can now try something. Yeah, definitely definitely not gunpowder. Okay, so that's that, guys. I really want to keep this one under an hour because this is just a test live stream. It looks like, as I glance over to YouTube, it looks like that's at least 3 or 4 minutes behind. It's probably 5 minutes behind. It's a significant delay. Interesting. So for the Discord, guys, any questions? Anything I can react to quickly that our YouTube audience can listen me react to in like 4 minutes? Anyone want to print one of these? Yeah, go ahead, Dave. Yeah, you would. You'd have compression issues. Yeah, it would. So for the YouTube guys who can't hear Dave's question, he's asking about essentially your question, Dave, is, you know, does the material and the size of the conveyance apparatus, in this case these tubes, is it important? Is there a way to mess it up? To which the simple answer is yes. They could be too narrow, in which case, that Venturi effect does nothing. They could be too rigid, or they could be placed at too steep of an angle, where again that effect is lessened. They could be of a material like silicone or what have you, or if they're too small, or you'll get a kink in the line, or even you'll deal with not compression but compaction, where the material that you're using, potato flour or whatever product we end up deciding, that may compact, which I know is a big issue with people using flour like on powder guns and whatnot. Is it'll clump. I mean, gosh, we run into other issues like moisture retention and is it metal, and you're flying out in the morning and then it gets hot and you have some condensate in there, and suddenly your flour is dough. So the short answer is absolutely yes. There are many things that could go wrong. Um, but all those things that would go wrong would happen a within a finite space. Like the goal of, I think, intuitive design, when we're talking about add-ons